Yes, good afternoon. My name is Lynn. This this observation that I'm going to be giving, subject to the heading, something to the effect of possibly being able to explain things that seem rather unexplainable, or why is it that some things, because of what's happened in terms of the response, again, doesn't add up. Whatever the title is, these are some observations that I hope might be handed on, if watched responsibly, to members of legislative, elected public officials, police departments, and marketing corporation, to give you a bit of an insight as to why some things are occurring more and more progressively now that really don't make sense, or kind of contradict the terms of long-term models that essentially should always work but are now or not. And with that, I'm going to go on with this. My background has been extensively in sales and marketing in a diverse number of industries, primarily to do with electronics, technologies, and science, and building, and yes, in sales, the absolute study of human behavior as far as the act-react, the stimulus response, in order to effect an effective sales presentation to allow a person psychologically to have the ability to make a decision. And if you do it ethically, which I do, and most people do, that is fine. But there's the reversal. So with that, anybody that might wish to get back to me about the extensions off of certain observations I'm going to keep for economy awards and things to basically twig and establish that there's a legitimate observation I'm making, that what you might get to further conclude or substantiate or cross-reference with the references that I can provide in the back, and that will prove conclusively, yes, what I'm going to be telling you is the truth based on fact. But will hopefully give you some explanations as to why. Why are things not really making sense, or why are things getting more disturbed and chaotic or whatever? And we really don't know why, but it seems to be happening. There's no finger pointing or drawing conclusions with any regard to any specific potentials or intentions, and as far as the infrastructures or the industries representative, because as we know, for every good use something has, often there's a bad use. There's always a dual situation to it. Like a door is a good thing if you can open it and walk through, or a door is a bad thing if it's locked and you can't get in, and you should be able to. One can make you happy, the other can make you sad. That's just the dual. So everything is a duality. One or the other, somewhere in between. Pretty much every level under metaphysics, new quantum physics, Newtonian physics, and right down to pretty much everything as far as act-react, and the whys and why not, or if this is happening and the outcome isn't what it should be, why is it the other? Okay? So on we go. With that, over the years, I've noticed these accumulations of more chaos or anxiety or antagonism or stress in the society. Having been an avid reader and a researcher, and primarily into sales and academics, and knowing the science, knowing the marketplace, knowing the et ceteras, as I say, I can get into the extensions if somebody wishes to further investigate with me to really substantiate what in general terms I'm going to outline here for you. And as far as police, security, corporations, and keeping it real, I hope you take to heart that it may be of benefit if you wish to get back to me, because I can certainly provide, if you might wish, I guess, value for whatever money or favor I might do, just in the fair regard of the eminence of getting this out there to make the world aware of these things, so these danger things basically can be minimized and kept down, because it just seems to be getting worse and worse. So I'm going to show you the wheres and the why fors, and from the simple level, the technologies that show these really do exist and are being used or misused. Okay, from the bottom to the top. Okay, let's say for example, you used to go out and you basically used to say hello to a certain group and everything's fine. You haven't done anything wrong, and all of a sudden the group is they're all cool about you and that, and you know that you hadn't done anything or said anything, but all of a sudden it's cool. Obviously, at that point, the conjecture, or usually the reality is, somebody's perhaps made something up or misassumed something about you, and there's a misunderstanding or misconception by the group, and all of a sudden they're standing off about you. A simple observation I had years ago was, you always know that you're the center of some notable controversy when you're not hearing any from anybody else. Now, one other further qualification is, as far as personality type, you can go out on YouTube. I am an INFJ. There's 16 basic personality types in the world, of which I am an INFJ. Now, only 1% of the population generally are INFJs. A common denominator is we have a sixth sense. We have the ability, in a subconscious level and an awareness, to become aware of patterns that are happening and concurring. And in some regards, we kind of have, I don't know, an intuition or an omen or something about things, and all of a sudden we start speculating on things and analyzing subconsciously in some cases what might be the outcome, or what's the occurrence, or what do you see. Not a prophecy, just an intuition. However, because I was in sales and marketing, as well as that well-backgrounded in psychologies and sales from my academics in university and like that, backgrounding in economics and pretty much anything, because I'm a polymath, so and I relatively kind of take things up like a sponge, and I have a fairly easy level of comprehension because it comes down to one or the other, either or, and it's great for whether it's basically engineering, building, reverse engineering. It's one or the other, and a stable foundation on the basis of one or the other, and this, that. It's pretty good up, down, no matter what topic you're on to. So we'll leave that alone for now. However, I came down that you can examine these things and determining things on math and explainables, but of an either or, and I'll give you an example. For example, a person either feels good or bad, or they feel fulfilled or they feel empty. Okay? When you feel good, you feel exuberant, you feel energetic. When you're feeling somewhat shallow or defeated, or some information is coming, all of a sudden you're feeling good and you're defeated. Okay? On a spiritual level, again, it's physics. Your head, in some regards, like an antenna, is basically open to frequencies. If you're somewhat neutral and passive and accepting and objective, well, as an antenna, you might perceive good feelings or get good vibes off of somebody, or bad vibes, or you might be projecting good vibes or bad vibes. And yes, on a frequency level, by flux and dynamics and EMI signatures or Kirlian photography, these are known to the industries and into sophisticated investigative sciences, and yes, corporations, artificial intelligence, on, and flux. It's a very sophisticated thing behind the scenes. Like, for example, I've studied over time, for example, for the last 25 years, as far as metaphysical transfers, thought patterns into a thought wave or transfer or interpretation through EMI or specific frequencies that run in alignment with certain frequencies known about the function, the biodynamic electrical functions of the mind and the system, the human biology. It has been known for 25 years at least, and then you can actually play a reality where you can have somebody hearing voices. Period. It's been done. Believe me, it's done. So we'll just keep that in mind. As well as that, your mind can be as an antenna and interpretive. So a lot of people can have an intuitive or a psychic ability, or actually technology can actually have some level of influence on a frequency or perception level over and above visual, which used to be subliminal advertising as far as a snap in the screen that you don't notice, but the proofs were made years ago that essentially, ethically, it was taken out. I'll give you an example. Back in the movie theater days years ago, for example, if there was just a quick snap frame that you didn't even notice out of the one of the 28 frames per second, was a great big bowl or tub of buttery popcorn. When those things started getting voted into the movie theaters, notably, there was a notable rise in popcorn sales. That was discovered. Sorry, it was taken out. Popcorn sales went down. So people like to max and get maximum for return for, and get the crowding and get the money, and for profits and for whatever. It's also used in sales. A lot of people will make you feel good about something on the basis of, yes, the truth. Some our con artists will make you feel good or excited, and gotta have on simple psychologies of people buy for one or two reasons, primarily to gain pleasure, to add to pleasure, or to gain pleasure, to avoid the displeasure or the discomfort in the absence of the product, or the other side is to substantiate inadequacy or fear, or I say a less than that, by buying something to basically feel the good, or basically substantiate the absence or the inadequacy. As far as, is it going to make money for me, or is it going to cost? I think you get that. I can go into further detail if people wish to get back. So here we go. Yeah, I'm going to show some things, like, for example, there's been observations over the years about certain things that are happening. Like, all of a sudden, somebody, for example, seems to be having, especially since computers and smartphones and these things have come up, and Wi-Fi and internet connections and that, all of a sudden, some people, for some reason, are having unusually bad luck, or all of a sudden they get into a frenzy and buying or something, and they basically go out of normal human behavior, supposedly. Now, there's things is, and the truth of the matter, again, known by substantiated, yes, by CIA, on, you name it, and essentially as far as things, let's go right back to about 93, 94. There was a fellow whose name was Dr. Richard Zukov, who wrote a book, The Seat of the Soul. And basically, through extensive researches, he saw on a spiritual level, a basic common known dynamic, that there are two basic emotions, apparently. Love and fear. Love, fulfilling, giving, taking, whatever, confident, and then there's fear. Reactive, defensive, suspicious, wary, fully examining, or greedy, grasping, gotta have, because too much is never enough, because they're in deficit. Dr. Richard Pryor, a couple of years later, actually got it down to a simpler thing. There's only one emotion. And it comes down to, they say that everything is made out of love. God is love, actually, in terms of the light wave and divine proportion, and the actual scientifics of no one, I guess. All that is, if we want to call it love, if God is love, and essentially everything comes from love, or the divine proportion light waves on the giving side, that is the truth. Scientifically, quantum, right, metaphysically. Believe me, that is. So, that being the case, as Dr. Wayne Dyer says, you have one emotion. You have love. Going forward, giving, fulfilling, spreading, sharing, cooperating, working in synergy, and opportunistic, positive benefits, with a win-win kind of attitude, okay? But then you have love going the other way. Not opening and, extroverting outward. You have an inverted light wave. at which point a person becomes inverted. At that point, maybe they become fearful, or they become departed from obvious things as far as sensibility, as far as respect, disrespect, short-tempered, bad conduct, as I say, greedy, grasping. So, like I say, a spiritual light wave, again, as far as emanating, as far as an EMI pattern, which can be interpreted, is this guy on the level? Is he good? Is he bad? Or, as I say, a lot of people kind of get a feel for something. Or dogs, for example, they say they're a very good judge of character. Strangers can come in the yard for years and years. Dog, hi, how are you doing? All of a sudden, stranger comes into the yard, and all of a sudden, another garden, the dog is giving him attitude from the time he gets in and gone. And usually you find out in certain dog had pretty good judgment. And kind of spiritual. Telepathics. I think you're getting the yeah, you're getting the feel of it. Okay, let's get back to these things. With these things, with AI and that, and two-way, and this is a C, screens, differentials, flux dynamics. And to save some economy of words again, I would ask you to refer to my other YouTube video that I put out several months ago called Living in a State of Flux. That will explain in some further elaboration and sophistications and conclusions to back up what I'm saying right now. As far as opening internet or integrated with thing, you know, as they say, equipment in your house or your television screen, or the realities of it are, a television screen, a smartphone, actually Wi-Fi out in the air, and some other telepathic things, and some realities known, as they say, as some huge sophisticated groups that have AI and satellite systems on laser and convergence and that are talking about a microchip in the head, which with you can interrelate and intercommunicate live, you know, metaphysically, you know, hardwired into the internet, access information across and reference people telepathic or on the Higgs boson field, which I am fully aware and fully conversant in as well, and do have some level of practical knowledge and experience on that. But we won't get into that right now. But essentially, these things exist. That there's a way that you might suspect that some people might be under mind control, or some people are reacting some unusually, or you see things happening on the internet as far as large corporations where, geez, we put out that ad system on the basis of the ads, the numbers, the known industry responses, the give or the take, and the known models. There should have been a return to this. But geez, consistently all of a sudden, there doesn't seem to be any return at all. Well, human behavior hasn't changed, but the stimulus response maybe has, because of something on the other side, or maybe you're in competition with somebody that might have access to these sophistications out in social media, cross-reference and dynamics. You never know. However, say, refer to that thing, that other video. So, all of a sudden, or maybe you see some corporation that goes and defies the numbers, and it's having a meteoric rise as far as profitability, success, and that. And can you speculate at that point, as far as the sophistications on what I'm showing here? Perhaps, you know, somebody else is putting out something, but on the read of that, through that, and screen things, and well, that they can do a tag, and when you see that spread, it's tagged, so when it hits, there's kind of a reaction, but at that time, it loads as far as the negative reaction or response by the reader, or there's a pop-up that takes them over to them, and all of a sudden, maybe there's a spiritual wave in the buy-sell. Subliminals that basically compromise the thing of free enterprise and fair ethics, and in virtual land and a whole bunch of other things. We'll go on a little further now. Like, for example, and we'll go on a little further, for example, like, where would we go with this? Well, let's give you my example. I was watching things, you know, and as I say, I put that audio out numerous months ago. But I had been watching these things and observations by other people, and they're very perceptive. A lot of things aren't making, why is this, why is that? Why are, and known industry standards. And yes, as far as internet marketing dynamics and the flow of numbers against certain script alignments as far as effective act react to do a presentable, consistent, high percentage sale against number of emails sent against certain demographics against percentage returns. Some people all of a sudden it's not working anymore, but some are just going through the roof on the examinations of what they're doing. It's not really any more or less than the other. However, as far as if it's basically trigged with a nice wave, it's appealing, and basically the wave when it comes out might be interpreted, is this guy feeling in deficit or is he feeling good? And on the light wave, while if he's in deficit, we'll give him a light wave that makes him feel good to draw on to you. Or if he's feeling good and that, well, we'll make him feel better and we'll load him up. Or basically, we'll draw and pull a pull wave that makes him feel insecure about what they've got, and all of a sudden the light wave feel good. Simple. Real. Can be done. It's been substantiated, yes. So, here we go again. And numerous months ago, I put out that other audio. A few months before that, on a national news television, there was further accounts of people that had, well, one was a minority group that came from a large population group, but they noticed when they came over to Canada, they were still getting harassed by that home country, and so as far as interference and violations of bank things and run around and just misfortune, and nobody could understand. And how did they get tracked down in the first place? Well, again, EMI signatures and a whole bunch of things. However, and it was happening in other places. But the thing is with these things, was it actually the response, or was it being caused by that particular country as far as the harassment of those people? Or was it some other corporation or country that had the knowledge of the technology and was basically using a patent contrivance to basically victimize or wrongly have supposition of possibly the obvious, but quite often the obvious is never what it is. And basically the person is trying to set up and make bad news for who it would obviously be. And so they don't get detected in a frame. Well, basically when you're framing somebody, you're always going to avoid suspicion due to the third party setup. So it's always, and in conclusion, but if you go back and check algorithms, everything is findable. But here's the other thing. Apparently, some countries, well, here it is, on 2 specific countries, and then internally in other countries, come to believe there's well over 100,000 successful hacks on virtual land of businesses and institutions and things in North America on a daily basis. Wow. Successful hacks. Now, hacks as well as that can be done on stealth. They can sit sideways when it pops, they go in, they get what they need, they get back out, no sign that they've been there. How did they get through these things? Well, I can show you in simple attitude how you can basically jump in and do all these things. But let's say for example what happened to me. After I started to put out that video and started putting some things together, similar things started to happen to me as the exploitation of those things and other things that I observed. Didn't put it down, but over a sequence of times, more things became, and all of a sudden became apparent that there was interference in my phone, and just conclusively shutting down 4 consecutive email apps and showing signs, with which I kept conclusively accounting and sending off by orders and that to other within groups. In that process of elimination, it finally came down to some conclusions, quite conclusively, of where the cover-ups were, and it was a variation of one dynamic or other, but essentially, I'll give it to you in simple terms. If you are somebody that is out and you're operating by yourself and you know exactly what you're doing and you're thinking logically in that, and you go out and you're within a group, and if you want to see a group, or basically there's a group looking for you, well, if you go out and putting up setups so you know triggers when they're looking, so you can defend, or basically, as I say, let's say a guy out in the forest and there's a whole army full of quads or tanks and they're all battery operated or whatever, well, and they're cross-coordinating and they've got to be field commander and clumsy, but you're on your own. you're set up, you know where you are, they don't. So you just keep an eye and maybe throw a rock in the sound and it's over there. And when they got the back turned, you go and undo the battery pack. Statistically, well, the movie Rambo, for example, statistically, the man strategically, mathematically, psychologically, reality, he had them outnumbered. And that is the truth on the reality of who would come out ahead. So, in a simple dynamic. So, let's say, for example, out in virtual land or something, they want to get run off some other corporation, or not insider trading, or you can be titty-titty, but insider trading, no snooping and dropping and getting things. But as far as we'll say, passwords and stuff like that, well, essentially, it was proven conclusively over time as these things kept clearing, and I kept handing them off. And unfortunately, handing them off adjacent to authorities, but conclusively as far as possibly tags and interference, that the authority reacted, or spirits or whatever, or by inference or prior examinations, never got to it, couldn't see the thing, dropped the ball in light of the obvious that they shouldn't have, or on and on. Well, if you're seeing these things, it comes right down to the thing here. And here's the security thing. Police these days are run off their feet and they're straight. My God, we don't know why things are happening. Well, I basically given some accounts to them that showed as to why, but the interpreter, for some reason, they didn't bother to listen to the litany of examples that they saw. And at that point, they phoned back and please do not leave all these accounts of things. We don't have time to listen to all this stuff. It took 8 minutes to erase all these messages. That's just too many. But if you have these things or crimes or evidence and blah, 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 all these things they're concerned about trying to stop. Essentially, that is what I'd given. But they didn't have time to go through the obvious. And my Lord, if a guy leaves that many consecutive messages, might there not be something of concern that he really wants to get us to listen to? Or is it a mind wave for the saw or somebody? You never know. But that happened. Simple example, coincidence. Well, too many other coincidences happened. But over time, it came down to, on a simple level. Let's say, for example, organized crime or police, why they can't catch people. Well, on a simple level, people have an iPhone. Well, here's on a simple level. Go out and Google apps, okay? And basically Google what kind of app. An app that can basically hook into somebody else's phone, so lifetime, you can basically know exactly what's going on that phone, who he's sending to, and realistically look at him while he's looking at the screen, or look out and control the camera and look out and see whatever. And there's numerous of them. And it also qualifies the sophisticated people that have really sophisticated hidden apps can come in and do a real job. And so, there you go. So, fine. Now we understand why I was accounting, but see, it was conclusive when shutting down these apps, and conclusive how they can get in. And yes, there's another little insight that I'm not going to share because they haven't figured out possibly how, as far as these guys that are so proud of these sophisticated encryption things, that people can never get through them. Excuse me, you know, a simple thing. It's quick as a wink, and the setup is basically having a way to kind of get into a person's phone or system, all of a sudden set into things so when the encryption trigger comes up, and well, there's a correlating sequence, and poof, you remember that, and after they leave, well, you can do someplace else, and they'll never know. So let's get down to kids or crime or sophisticated from the bottom to the top. You have one guy, young or old, but let's say he wants to do something. Well, we can talk about all the good you can have, which is always good when you use technology for good. For say if it's an integrated or cross-reference things or chip implants or phone and integrated things, for crime prevention or examination to stop all these contrivances and violations, for unethicals or crime, or unethicals relatively, or we'll just call it not nice, and basically going against the rules as far as playing fair, we'll call that. So here we go. One guy has the app, let's say, okay, fine, so he can get into somebody's phone. Fine, at that point, click, buzz, off to the network. It back downloads and feeds off to maybe 6 or 7 other, or 12 or 14 other, say kids or something that are doing some bad, or basically want to do, or organized crime. And all of a sudden, well, at that point, they can observe a guy or that guy in a cross, and all of a sudden those guys are cross-coordinated, and they know exactly where the guy is. GPS, they can hear him, they can say him, they know when he's sending a phone, they know where he is, and as well as that, so they can set up cross-coordinate, or basically with police forces, they can use this to kind of, or basically external control, or basically controlling or perhaps influencing their own nice things against governments of that or leaders by misconceptions or this, that, and the next thing. And well, as I say, trust, confidence. Who's saying it? Do you trust them? Do you feel good? I trust, I don't trust. Free choice against this, that you can start being, some things aren't adding up against the common sense. If you say, excuse me, there's something really dangerous about what this is pitching, and they just look the other way, even though they got the conscience to say, yeah, we should react, but they just keep looking the other way and ignore. You know, something's up. Or they're basically overrated their influence, so they can't, or there's under duress. You always know. But here's another account of a simplicity, I will also say. Here's this. Well, I think I get. So let's go up a little bit more sophisticated. How about microchips tied in with waves, or basically microchips or something, or AIs with large satellite networks and down feeds and vertical feeds, and the whole spread of the internet in the background, and triggers and kick-ups and flags and tagging, and basically all these things as individual files, or if it goes out to one person and it's a duplicate copy to many, but each one has a different pop-up and tag system on it, so all of a sudden it goes out. In the meantime, there's a reception to basic and tag and divert or frustrate or feel the person's mind out there that's receiving that, and maybe head it back to somebody or central and steal somebody else's business. These things can happen. So, and this is why street crime is being part. This is why possibly chaos and people are stressed out more, because yeah, well, basically, if you load stress in there and basically you've got the solution, all of a sudden the pop-up and the solution's up. Oh boy, good for sales. Or if you're trying to impose a certain legitimacy about a crisis and you have the population possibly spread and react in a certain insecure or reactive thing that says to the public, yeah, we got to do that, and you pitch, it's not needed, but it's for external control to perhaps accentuate or basically opportunize nefariously against creating a market or psychological system that allows to market in or exploit or take, again, from the bottom level, or we bring it right down to the simple level. Let's say, for example, guy's sitting around and all of a sudden the guy gives a pitch and he says, well, geez, let me think about it. All right, so he figures and he goes out to the Google and he says other things that basically, so what you do is he sees about 4 other 5 authority sources and he Googles, but in the meantime the lock on, so when the Google goes up or whatever about what it is, all of a sudden it pops up 4 or 5 substantiating concurrent things and shows that guy's legitimate. So you see 4 or 5, fine, sounds good to me. But if it was left alone, perhaps you might have seen a litany of other things that says, stay away, stay away, stay away. Truth happens. What's going on? So, that being said, down here, if you're wondering, I guess realistically the system is to such now that anybody that has a phone or a PC or whatever, the technology is totally there that, yes, some levels are probably inside your phone at your leisure or your computer, finding out anything or everything they need to know to basically create realities that perhaps contradictory to the best outcome, and as far as you personally are maximized to make their pitch or their nefarious undermine successful or whatever. As I say, it has come to that level of sophistication, and so and really that is the truth. So in my personal situation, over the last 6 or 7 months or a year and a half since I've been making these observations responsibly. And as they say, backing up and running concurrent with technologies and research, because I was in high level of observations of security and control and ethics and that. And large successful corporations and science and all these things and coincidences over my life and things that, and with my relative intuitive sixth sensibility, plus substantiated by after fact and simple psychological provings and these scientific things as far as I've explained to you here today. Essentially, the reality is, if you got a phone or you got a PC or whatever, and you're hooked up, well, essentially, as far as, are you feeling mind control? Are you doing things where you, as I say, these things have to be tagged and basically shut down, because essentially, specifically, and especially over the last 6 or 7 months, since I was becoming aware and put out that video called Living in a State of Flux about these realities. Essentially, all of a sudden, the real life conclusions, and I kept trying, how are they doing it? Possibly because I needed conclusions as opposed to speculation on the national news numerous months ago about how weird things are happening and people far, far away against, in terms of the people that might have an alter or real motive as to exploit people or shut them down. Well, yes, in the same way as on that national news thing, I've had my bank systems coincidentally exploited in certain things that tag on to certain things that make it impossible. And basically, my bank has become fully aware something was really up. And on, but how was it doing? And I was showing how people can get in, monkey around, change records, stack the evidence, predate all these things, and as they say, possibly to set up and make it uncomfortable for leaders of corporations, because evidence in there they didn't put in there, but it kind of looks like they might be responsible, which could victimize them and leave it so often people don't know the truth. But when it all comes narrowing down as one central point in things, you got to focus as far as the awareness of these things, obviously, as far as simple psychological control dynamics, of which provably and accountably back in 96, 97 and that, on base twos and give and take, and those basic psychologies with which I responsibly shared at that time with an agency that is in, well, we'll say in very specific and very ethical and profoundly accurate down to the nth thorough degree of what it is on the truth-based and examinable facts. And so I substantiated these either-or things to conclude I knew exactly what I was doing, how to analyze on that, and in some way, as far as the base thing, along with things that I substantiated from Dr. Richard Zuskoff, Wayne Dyer, and all these other things of act-react things over the years. And they knew I knew exactly what I was doing, and they didn't know how. Well, over time, well, as I say, I became to know that I am an INFJ. And over my life, yes, I have had a conclusive kind of question. Why does he always seem to come up and become aware of these things? And why is it in the end? Why is he always possibly correct? He must be a spy, or is he... No, I have this intuitive ability. Plus, I basically scientifically put down and have these background things in numerous categories, physics, well, yeah. I'm not a know-it-all, but in general terms of base 2, when you get the basis in that, and my level of comprehension. And the basics is all you need to basically see patterns and kind of go out in the sophisticated level to find out what it really is, or analyze what was going on, so for either or not, figure out what is the truth, what isn't. If you've got two stories that are basically, they're keeping the story straight, or they're telling the truth and they back up, you can find out if they're both aligning because it is the truth, or if they're keeping the story straight, simply the next thing you know, oh, I'm sorry, but this isn't adding up, and I'll show you why. Oops, all gone. But, as I say, as far as examination, cross-examination, no matter whether it's a group thing or by what they're saying or what they're refusing to say, the simple interpretive is you can always expose, and yes, with visual cues, psychologies, and that, the read in real time. Hey guys, and I have basically, it's been conceded by some investigative agencies and stuff as far as investigative psychological observation, examinations, and etc. I bet I really know what I'm talking about, and I'm up to speed with just about anything going on as far as any person that's working independently and analytically and not under mind control, or if I am, or when I see that something might be attempting, I have immediate observance saying there's a con, and I see these things. So I'm not going to get into any further sophistications about what level of indicators as far as things, as far as coincidental pop-ups or things in social media or whatever, or Q tags as far as the good guys are saying, we hear you, or we know, because in terms of some video that comes up on YouTube as far as a popular piece of music, or at any rate, as I say, if the CIA or examining or FBI or RCMP or CSIS or whatever, or corporations or business owners or politicians might have a further collaboration, because as I say, it's becoming more and more questionable about truthful outcome, about controls or foreign influences, about outcome of elections. The technological possibility was a contrived get in, change algorithms, cover height. If something's happening, I hear the description of that. I can give you a plausible and actually concise evaluation of seeing what could be causing it, that possibly is nefarious or out of sync, or basically I conclude this is actually what's happening because it's real and it should. And yes, I am that capable and accurate. I really am. So, as I say, right down to the simple things. As far as stuff for anybody that wishes to know, as far as possibly other people that are listening, because I've had things shut down when I've been trying to release real things about possible large artificial intelligence oligarchs and satellite systems that may be getting misused or overridden or contrived. And yes, convergent self-tracking laser systems up with these satellites, pretty clever as far as keeping track, but moving and convergent. But the thing is loading as far as a convergent collective field of collective load of laser all of a sudden wump into one satellite, loaded up with a capacitor discharge, click the vertical downfeed, wham, into an antenna or person's mind, or maybe a person's house, or give it and kind of warm a guy up, and or who knows, it possibly could start a fire. Who knows? Maybe it's maybe it's done or deliberately or an accident or a wild feed. You don't know, but these things are real. They are capable, and they could be happening right now by accident or oversight. You name it. So with that, and as they say, that is the truth. So I'm going to leave it with this, that if anybody wishes to get back in a full dissertation, as I say, if you're a large corporation, or if basically you're a responsible computer corporation or things, because I've been handing off, obviously, because the independent against the crossing of the main field of things is work off of, the old IBM system against Apple. Well, essentially, by hard copy in mail, I basically given them some things that they can put tags and observations and traces out on these formulas. That essentially does mean that it can be locked up properly and keep things real, so people can't jump in, and that way, essentially, truthfully, if you have the tags and setup as far as encryption systems, then they can work. But against bulletproof passwords and systems, there's something far better than an encryption system that is absolutely impossible to get through. Period. Unless you're set up in a way in prior that you can basically override for security systems, so that somebody else is trying to use it, you're already set up so you can walk through, and that would be in the hands of a secured government authority and systems, as opposed to an independent private corporation and things. And at that point, things can get real. But essentially, but as far as to figure out and simple down, well, as they say, if you have a thing where you consider that something might be in your phone, it's as simple as finding a competent corporation or independent computer company system, or an investigator or a lawyer or police system that says, excuse me, But here's the feed off this phone. Can you go out and do a broad overall general sweep system of the cloud, this, that, and the next thing to kind of see if the flags, and get us a central point where it's all going back to and getting redistributed, so you can get the bad guy or the little group of street gang guys and buddies that are all kind of going in, finding some clever way to basically not get caught on Halloween in the old days when they're tipping over outhouses or whatever, or as they say, tipping over and taking over world economies, or undermining or creating unusual deficits, or bank systems, or contriving an inflationary to feed as far as serving other things. These are all possible. These are all indicatively, observably going on. And things, and if it's on the conspiracy thing that's unethical and it's causing harm, and basically, I personally think that it is rather a harmful thing if a handful of people are kind of gone to their head, or the computers kind of, they're in a mismatch, and all of a sudden there's distortions, and a handful basically deciding, well, geez, we can possibly rule the world, and they do it from an exploitive, because their interpretation is the best way is to line and regiment and brainwash, or basically put control mechanisms or legislations in, so you can't do this, can't do that, and you have to relearn or be afraid to do what comes naturally in contradiction to human behavior, which creates stress and dynamics and frustration, breaks down basically couples, families, social interactions, crime goes up, doctor calls go up, police calls go up, hospital things go up, all these things, and yes, biologically, psychologically, interdynamically. If you want a full explanation, by all means come to me. I'll be happy to give it to you. It's based truth on logistical, provable fact. But essentially, so as all these sophisticated things came right down to the nth degree that I could basically prove as to how I had a sequence thing where obviously the numerous group of the scenario, the group of people in the police organization that coincidentally showed up numerous minutes after I showed up there, but served the purpose of kind of a cover-up of some large thing further out there that accountably I showed numerous things and tried to elaborate and disclose it to people, but unfortunately the police agency for some reason just kept, ignoring the emails and erasing the messages and that. But it came down to the bottom because at that point, intuition or whatever, it got off the different agencies and that. And I believe it kind of got upstairs to some other levels that had seen this and had been kind of working on it for you. And thankfully, yes, possibly the CIA tied in with the Pentagon and the military and responsible political leaders, and yes, through White House back to and all over the place and head corporations, so that it kind of sequentially kept clearing things up, and kind of when my emails were getting blocked or shut down, or things, and noticing another sophisticated what's the word, encryption systems out of a state-of-the-art email system someplace else consistently. All of a sudden it was showing somebody was getting pretty clever, because against those sophisticated with tags and all. Yes, essentially analytics. I've got the whole dissertation, and essentially there's numerous out in group emails that relatively have it, and it is the truth based on fact that essentially what I saw and what happened, that as they say, several years ago I was cash flowing, everything was fine, I was happy, and all of a sudden, for some reason, I started making awareness of these things, and I was in with a group of scientists, eminent, respectable people in marketing things, and, as they say, environmentalists and adjacent industries. And we came up with some notable things as far as things that would provide in a big budget and that would provide and lend to global cooling, clean up a whole bunch of problems on provable sciences and based on fact. But it was somewhat running in competition, or possibly contradiction to some other groups out there that had some things going on, that an examination on the science of laws of conservation of energy, or global warming, or simple science of evaluations substantiated by well-known PhDs and things that over time and that, and proven models on scientific that it would work, and there's where in question. Well, all of a sudden, strange things started happening. And 3.5 years later, instead of cash flowing and credit rating and well accepted and well thought of, all of a sudden, here I am, having done nothing but trying to get to the bottom of it and getting shut down. And I'm wondering why I'm getting conclusively that essentially I do know, and those disclosures have been made. And I'm providing this so that other people, if they have things, I can show you patterns, kind of how to clear it up. And be it politicians, be it police, and be it private guy around that's got some kids in the yard, and how to figure out and what group of iPhones and what are they up to, or apps, or is it, or to the from the top to the bottom. And there's some things that have to be shared, because the reason things are people are starting to act strange or against contradiction, or crime and stuff in the streets is getting more and more, and well, there's always an explanation. There's always a cause and an effect. There's always an act and a react. There's always a stimulus and a response. And they should make always consistent, but when there's always a stimulus and a questionable response, or you put in something good and it's a negative, then you know something's up. So I saw that something was up, and finally got it down to conclude that what's up? Well, my email systems are down to the point that I really can't send emails. If I send a text, or sometimes it's there, sometimes it goes in the green button. Well, but I've handed these off to responsible authorities, and well, it's getting filtered on, and I believe it's handing up, thankfully, in the hands of the CIA and some other people that for years have been trying to figure out why are some weird things happening that were considered some level of hidden conspiracy that they wanted to get to the bottom of. And I basically read a book in '83 by, I believe, an FBI or CIA agent, and became aware of something unnice that was going on long term. And he felt, after he found out that they found out that he knew, he wrote a book and he went on national media television throughout the United States to do an expose, because he felt that might be his best safety factor to make sure that, well, perhaps if somebody came back and got at him, well, perhaps they pointed in directions some people didn't know where to look. However, I can't say mine's at that extreme, but same dynamic. But the truth of the matter is, as far as conspiracy or things that run coincide about some questionable things that run all, I really don't add up as far as sequential, as far as New World Order legislation, outcomes, and environment, and the realities. There's a real contradiction in terms, and say that realistically there's some level of harmful conspiratorial thing running alongside in misuse of these technologies that are basically exacerbating or misguiding or taking us off on a very unnice, unintended aberration off of what possibly the New World Order, what might have ever become. Because, well, really, in conclusions by, yes, former academics and former head of the United Nations Environmental Council and researchers and PhDs, as far as population, that, well, realistic radio wave ionizations, all these things that I've recounted to my group that's getting strong approval and wanting to get off the ground. Well, realistically, as far as light waves, manna from heaven, sustaining and stuff, realistically, you can clean up the planet, you can have the oceans healthy, more things, and a re-energization of productivity of plant and animal health and that. And more and more food, and I'll get into those elaborations but realistically, an old friend of mine, Dr. Charles Wallach, who left the United Nations Environmental Council as head back in the early 80s, with a PhD in physics, biophysics, and ionization, and a whole bunch of other things. And I have been researching. Essentially, the conclusion was, and when I did a reconfirmation, when I came up with some other ideas, prior to some other things provable by a couple of separate White Houses on the truth of examinable engineering facts and things and analysis. It's no coincidence. I can put some sensible, broad-scale, comprehensive evaluations and concise down that certainly makes sense. But at present, it's realizing that these group of people out here that are running for some new things, it's totally easy to kind of make a few simple adjustments and recollect, kind of go off, and the world can comfortably support 30, 40, 50 billion people sustainably, and well, and not a problem, because, and as have we got space? Well, right now, with all the people on Earth, if we stuck them all in Australia, everybody would have realistically about just under 2 acres of farmland within which to live, and all these other things. So with that, thou shalt not kill. There's lots to provide if you just approach it properly. From abundance, we don't have to have a whole bunch of... And as far as global warming, well, we can cool it down. The models have been in place, and unfortunately, well, things have been kind of shut down, so I can't get this out. And my group out there, which includes very large international banking families and that, and acknowledgements and confirmations as far as agreements, as far as moves, as far as terminating attitudes towards some technologies that were going to be causing saving of global warming, that it was upside down. At any rate, a lot of people out there in competition with things that aren't really working in terms of global warming are still going up, even though their technologies are supposedly bringing it down, but it's not, and they're still trying to keep them going and keep us out of the road. Well, I'm causing some confusion about some people, but it's conclusive. A lot of people are trying to keep some things and solutions and explanations from being heard, but hopefully if you hear this thing, and this audio, or this video rather, you can get back to me at the, and my phone number is 306-485-9976. Call or text, or as I say, my contact and stuff. Well, it tags him. You'll be able to get a hold of me, and in the meantime, if the CIA or everybody kind of gets the drift and can figure it out from there, and you don't have to talk to me, but it's worth a lot. Well, remember me, because essentially I've got some provable models as far as website ideas and dynamics and that essentially over the years I have done different things as far as proofing. I've done lead generation face-to-face and sales things on effective, ethical, win-win, conscientious, ethical things on quality products and that. Yes, in very short order, I can quite often turn numbers 3 and 4 times the average of the sales group that's been there, or lead generation. I can see models as far as dynamics for different types of profitable websites or whatever. If you got something and basically need some authoritative or an overview, I can give it. I can point you to the right people with proven models, and yes, horses' mouths on the basis of ethics and proven dynamics, that I won't lead you wrong, and often it'll be basically, go ahead and find out for yourself. When you see the results, then you can get back to me. After you're making money, I'll get a percentage. Or if you say, again, whatever the deal, it will be value for the money, and I'm always fair. And basically, I do my best to give you the truth that's a benefit to you, to cause problems to go away, so that you can carry on doing ethical benefit things to the world, so that we can all carry on, and thou shalt not kill, and and so peace, love, and holy coexistence, and all those things in my generation back in the days of World Community Village and stuff, and Alice's Restaurant, and all the ballads, and getting along and stuff, and Coca-Cola commercials like I'd like to sing, teach the world to sing a song in perfect harmony, and well, call me old-fashioned, but I'm kind of in love with the kind of thing where everything kind of work out and be okay for everybody, and much more for everybody, which is probably a possibility if we could get the word out and clean up these problems that keep causing things to happen that shouldn't happen, and get the negative and the bad stuff out of the way, and as I say, get some lockups and some fixes and things on the system, tighten up the security, get rid of the availability of those apps and that for kids or crime or whatever, and leave it in the hands of the police and the good guys, and out of the hand, basically, hand as well our tracking systems, because sometimes maybe some of the real supposedly good guys are corporations that do these things, but the impossibilize getting back to prove it. Well, leave it in the hands of the shopping end system that has override authority and right of world security. Click them, you're not being nice, come with me. You don't work behind your desk, go put somebody honest and ethical in there, and we'll all carry on. Thou shalt not kill, peace, love, harmony, and all those things, but there's shame on me, but I still hold to the old ways, but I kind of makes sense to me. I hope this made sense to you. Give me a call if you like, 306-485-9976, or call somebody that maybe knows some stuff about it all right, save yourself a buck, but it all comes back, because if you don't have to get back to me, or you can shortcut and save some money for somebody else, as long as the job gets done, so we can get things real and honest and everybody helping each other out instead of all this chaos and angst and all this stuff going down that really shouldn't. When the model we were working on 40, 50 years ago, everything was kind of real, but everything kind of went off and some other thing, and right now it's not. And I think we really all know that this is the truth, and it is rather unfortunate. But fortunately, I hope maybe this will give you an explanation so we can all do something about it to get everything going good again. In the meantime, best regards.